Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Etheria Restart video. So in today's video, guys, I wanted to talk about the PvP meta that we have right now, because I think it's the worst one we've had since launch. And not much has changed, honestly, with some of the minor tweaks that they had with the past patch. However, they've introduced new units as well. And what this has done is it has culminated in kind of a perfect storm. Where they've had overcorrections in two of the strategies with cleave and then also with crowd control, but none of the overcorrection has come to, turn 2 or Bruiser strategies, which is why now you have this sense of, meaningless to play any of the other two strategies. And before you go to the comments and talk about me just being whiny because I played crowd control or something like that and I'm just salty, it really isn't that. I need you guys to try and be objective about it and just listen to my take, because I'm not trying to be negative. I do want the format to be healthier so more people can have a little bit more fun with the strategy. I will say the silver lining right now, though, is I don't think games are super long like they were in previous seasons. It's just there is no other reason to play the other strategies. So if you look at the leaderboard in Summit Arena, you will look and you'll find just tons of turn 2 Bruiser strats, right? Which is the right strategy to be playing right now. You'll see some cleave in here. The issue with cleave is it only works with Messiah. And if you play an opponent more than one time, you will know that they are a cleave player, and you can pre-ban Messiah and their life just gets way harder. It is a big drop down from the type of options that cleave players have outside of Messiah, where the win rate, I would bet, just drops below 50% whenever Messiah is not involved. So these players that have made cleave work, the second time that they play their opponents, I don't know if it's working out for them as well. This is also a type of cleave with Lilium. So Lilium, Yelly, all of these players are cleave players, and they're probably having their Messiahs pre-banned. So the fact that they have gotten up this high is a testament to their play and their gear. They're probably doing very, very well. But 80% of the meta right now is tank. And I'd like to see how well those players are doing against, some of these top Bruiser comps, because if I were a betting man, I'd say that most of their wins are coming from non-Bruiser strategies. So let's talk about why this is an issue now versus when it wasn't an issue, last season. Some of the biggest issues is what I mentioned at the beginning, where there's been an overcorrection for Rev cleave, right? Cleavers. Now, I was one of the people that was saying Revelation needed to be nerfed, because it did. It wasn't benefiting any of the actual cleave strategies. It was just a crowd control multi-hit character could use Revelation. And that's not how the game's supposed to be played, in my opinion. So the problem is the way that Revelation acts, like the way it procs off of hits instead of scaling off of damage, is the issue with Revelation. But they tweaked it in a way where it's just like, okay, this is probably the easiest fix. And I agree, it was the easiest fix. But I think they need to relook at that. So this can still benefit damage dealers, but not turn everybody into a threat if they have multi-hits. So Revelation was the first one. And then the second one was the overcorrection to try and counter crowd control, because cleave is meant to beat crowd control, right? Because they're not very tanky. Tank is meant to beat cleave, and then crowd control is meant to beat tank. If you have this kind of correlation between those three strategies, it makes up for a healthy meta. Because you have to try and have counter picks and other units built to try and counter those things. The issue is turn 2 or Bruiser comps have so many different options to pick from, where cleave and crowd control do not. So the first overcorrection was Alicorn. Now, I think this shell needed to be updated. I think the change was good. Like I said, like none of the changes that they made, just you can't point to one individual thing that caused this. It's just an overall encompassing issue where so many different things took place that ended up getting us here. So Alicorn now dispels 3 debuffs, right? And it increases the effect res by 25% for every debuff dispelled. This is minor, this is a very strong skill. I don't want to take away from that. But the dispelling 3 debuffs was a very crucial key thing to this perfect storm narrative that I'm building. So it was the nerf to Revelation and then the buff to Alicorn. Now, on top of that, they released new units that absolutely destroyed counters to both cleave and both crowd control for turn 2. The first one was this character down here, Mizusumi Aya. Now, everyone can use her, but like I said, where this benefits the most is turn 2, because they have this passive that purifies a debuff even if the character is controlled. So this takes away any kind of need to build high effect res. It takes away any kind of need to, have any kind of thought process knowing that you're going to get something removed from if they're debuffed. It will guarantee get removed. Now, I know you can argue, well, just bring a bunch of debuffs and yada, 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 and then play the coin flip game. Yes, that's perfectly true. My point is if you bring this single character for turn 2 team comps, you literally have to base your entire strategy now to try and counter this character, because if you only bring 1 or 2 crowd control units, it's not going to matter. It's not. Even if you get off all of your debuffs, the other thing that you have to remember is there's other things that the game introduced that tie into this perfect storm. But let me get back to my point. So turn 2 now has this character, right? So it's really great against crowd control. And on top of that, she has this crazy ability that she pushes herself to the front of the turn meter. Cleave desperately relies on multiple nukes. You can't nuke an entire team with 1 attack. Messiah might be able to do it with players that do not have the ideal builds on their characters. But outside of Messiah, you're not doing it with Yeli and you're not doing it with Lilium. It's just not a thing, or Kokardi. They both have to have multiple attacks for their thing to go off. So if you do end up getting a kill, she pushes to the front of the turn meter and then pushes all of your slow bruisers to the front. So then the squishy, cleave units end up dying and then you win. So she was one of the issues. Some of the other things that took place here was, so you have Nymphonial that does additional cleanses, right? You have Ling Luo that was already doing her cleanse. You have Mizusumi Aya now that is doing cleanses. And on top of that, you introduce a character in Plume, which can help cleave, but it's also extremely beneficial to turn 2 players. Why? Because she's very, very fast. She's very fast. She's the fastest character in the game, and she also has turn meter push. So even if you build her in Bloodbath, if you get enough speed on her, what you're able to do is you're able to cut in front, maybe dispel an attack up or something like that on a cleave team, put the defense down and weakness. So now you've limited their potential for damage. But the biggest thing is the defense down, because turn 2 has a huge amount of Bruiser heroes to pick from that can do a single counterattack on a cleave unit that has defense down, and it will one-shot them, completely destroying the entire strategy. So you have Plume and you have Mizusumi Aya. On top of that, you had the buff to Alicorn and you had the introduction of Reaper Steps. So now Reaper Steps is another shell that benefits turn 2, where you can build very high effect res, right? Because the only way to really just cleave down a character is by putting some kind of debuff on them. So either weakness, vulnerable, or you have defense down, right? So if you build very high effect res, not only do you get the benefit of resisting this, but now you have the ability to cut in front, utilizing heroes like Ling Luo to purify everything, to get up immunity so you can't be debuffed. Or you can just use Mizuzumi Aya to cut in front with a huge turn meter boost. You get where I'm going with this? Same thing with Doki Doki. Doki Doki can now push in front and then turn meter boost all of your slow bruisers to the front and just kill everybody before they go. This is all of the things that just affect cleave. The very same things can be said about crowd control. I've already mentioned Alicorn. I've already mentioned Mizuzumi Aya. But now with the Reaper steps, you jump into a coin flip. Or Alicorn, you jump into a coin flip with all of the options that your opponent has at their disposal. So you have Doki Doki. You have Mizuzumi Aya. You have Ling Luo. You even have you have Nymphonial as well. You have characters like Sonya, who can purify. The list goes on and on. If you say there's counters to those things, there are. But the problem is you have no variance in your counterplay, especially if one or two key pieces are banned. Case in point, if your opponent ends up playing you enough times and they know you're a crowd control player, they can literally ban Heinrich, and if they pick first, they can pick Plume, and your entire strategy's dead. Entire strategy is dead, okay? You may say that there's other strip characters in the game. There are. You have Born, you have Holden, you have Mia. Holden and Born are highly contested in turn 2. So, I mean, you'll have to pick early. That's something that you can, I guess, justify, but then you'll have to build them very, very fast to do your cleanse, right? Your dispel, because you have to be fast enough to be able to outspeed a Ling Luo or a Doki Doki that is in Reaper Steps or an Alicorn, because they're going to get that big turn meter boost, right? Mia, on the other hand, she does not have any debuffs, but she can dispel. So this is like your only real pick if they do the play that I told you, where they ban Heinrich and then they pick Plume, right? Because Plume's also very, very good in turn 2. And then the same thing with banning Messiah. So if you ban these two characters, your win rate is going to skyrocket for turn 2. Outside of those things, cleave and crowd control significantly struggle. Now, on the flip side, for bruisers, okay, so who are the best bruisers? Who are the bruisers that can really get the job done? Whether people like it or not, they can run Messiah in like Law of Silence with Bloodbath. And if they pre-ban Heinrich, you have no way to strip that unless you get first pick and you take Plume. But all your opponent has to do is ban Plume. If you want to try and pick Plume in your safe pick, it's a possibility. But if you don't pick Plume first, it's very, very simple for the turn 2 Bruiser to go and pick Plume then. So it's a huge gamble to try and pick that. Along those same lines, okay, so let's say you're trying to pick your bruisers. Okay, Messiah can be a bruiser, right? You can make sure that that's a thing. Yeli can also be built in Bloodbath, because as a turn 2 player, you have a bunch of options, which is where I'm getting at with this. And if Yeli goes, even with Bloodbath on her, she's going to one-shot cleave units. She's going to one-shot crowd control units, because they need to be built fast with high effect accuracy. And you have to bring a damage dealer. You see where I'm going with this? On top of that, they can also bring Hoyon. Hoyon makes things a living nightmare for a cleave player that does not have Messiah, or a crowd control player that is not able to dispel, then crowd control, and hope that the Doki Doki doesn't get a turn, hope that the Ling Luo doesn't get the turn, or hope that the Mizuzumi Aya doesn't get a turn. right? Who else can they use as a bruiser? Lilium is another bruiser. You can't even crowd control her. So there's ways for them to just come in and one-shot your one damage dealer, and the game's basically over. Lilith can be a tank for them. Rahu can be a tank for them. Holden can be a tank for them. And Kokardi can be a tank. So any of those picks can literally be a pick to make turn 2 work, and you will struggle. Remember how I said cleave? If you ban Messiah, 50% win rate down the tube. If you ban Heinrich for crowd control, 50% win rate down the tube. Where with turn 2 Bruiser, all they need to do is they can go and pick Mizuzumi Aya, they can pick Doki Doki, they can pick Ling Luo, they can pick Fusho. Who else can they pick? They can pick Veronica. They can even pick Nymphonial. They haven't even had to pick Nymphonial. They can even pick Mia. They haven't even had to pick Mia yet. But Mia has a huge heal. Could you imagine Mia on like a Strive, Bloodbath, Swift Smite Lighthouse or something like that? She cuts in front and just heals everybody up, reduces skill cooldowns, activates Artisan. It's nuts. So they can pick all of these characters wherever they want, and then in the safe ban spot, they can pick one of the 9 people, and I didn't even mention Tiamat. They can pick one of those 9 characters. Born's another one. Shiada's another one. They can literally pick any of these characters in that safe ban spot to know that they will have a guaranteed damage dealer that's in Bloodbath, hard to kill, and all they have to do is bring in tons of supports in the other 4 picks because you only get 1 ban. Pre-banning, what do you pre-ban? Okay, maybe you pre-ban Doki Doki. Maybe you pre-ban Ling Luo. Maybe you pre-ban Fusho, right? Any of those choices, they're going to be viable, but then you're at risk to having the Mizuzumi Aya play. You have that risk of letting the Ling Luo or the Sonya play, right? It's way too much. It's way too much in regards to the amount of options that they have versus the other strategies, which brings me back to the final nail in the coffin, and it is Bloodbath. Now, I don't think Bloodbath on its own is the issue. It's literally everything else that has been building up to this, and then outside of all of the different options that they have, they can literally fall back on Bloodbath. Because of how this game works, if you have any character that does more than 1 hit, it just completely neuters your entire damage, which is why Messiah is so important. He does have a double hitter, but his first hit will do so much damage because Bloodbath won't be in effect yet. The follow-up attack is just enough to end up killing some of these bruisers, right? It's a possibility. He does need attack up. He does need like crit damage up sometimes to get the clear. But if he doesn't, if you don't have a well-built Messiah that's like 5 out of 5 on everything, and then you also have 5 dupes of him, you're going to have a hard time still. So there's been an overcorrection with Revelation. There's been an overcorrection on the shells and the characters that support turn 2. And on top of that, nothing has been done that helps the entire strategy of that composition, which is Bloodbath. And don't even get me started on stuff like Amber. I saw my buddy M put out a video the other day talking about Amber. Like, you put all of these turn 2 strategies on Amber, they're already hard to kill, and then you give them a second life. There's only like 2 characters in the entire game that have AoE wound. That's Mio, and then that's also Heinrich. I said Heinrich is already one of the main targets for a pre-ban against crowd control. If you ban him, you're already reducing the win percentage of that composition. So then all they have left is Mio. And again, so they have to put the Mio in the safe ban spot. But on top of that, they have to bring a Dispeller. I already said if they pick Plume, all they have left is like a really fast, weird Heinrich, a really fast Born, or a fast Mia. And if you pick any of those, not within the pre-ban spot, because remember, you had to put Mia there, all they have to do is take the Dispeller. And then you're like, okay, well, I can't even land this because the Ling Luo got up the immunity, the Mizuzumi Aya is able to play, or they have Bulwark. So it's too much. That's the issue. Now, I've said in a different video, the shells for damage dealers, they're just so bad. They're so bad in comparison to what supports get, to what bruisers get. You know, like this adds 700 defense. Yeah, that's awesome. But then you also get a shield? It's just like, come on, man. Here, for like a comparison, you have count, which is 1200. Okay, that's nice, but then it gives you life leech. Life leech literally does nothing against Bloodbath. I've talked about this before. Converting 10% of the damage dealt, if you deal 10,000 damage to a bruiser, which is a lot, you heal 1,000 damage. Where whenever they counterattacked you, they probably dealt 6, right? Count does nothing. This additional effect is so garbage in comparison to Artisan. Same thing with White Fang. Like, you get 8% additional crit damage. Awesome. Well, that's all you're getting because you don't get a second attack against bruisers. And if you do, whoopee, you got 8% crit damage. You have to wait another 3 turns before that builds up again. It's just absolutely insane, the different comparisons. This is the only good shell right now for damage dealers. And as crazy as this sounds, a Tiger Yin Lilium that has a 550% damage multiplier sometimes cannot one-shot, actually most of the time, can't one-shot a Tiamat, can't one-shot a Holden, can't one-shot a Rahu. Like, there's something wrong there, right? Where there's a possibility that a Holden one-shots somebody with an S2, just like on Jackal Guard. But yet, you can have the highest damage multiplier unit in the entire game, also dealing 50% more damage on this attack, and it still won't kill. That is just not right. Something's off there. So they really need to boost these attack scaling shells. And I know people hate playing against crowd control. I know some people hate playing against cleave. Like, you can go all different directions on what you hate to play. But I don't think it's even an argument that the game is balanced right now. It's not. It is so overswung to the other side. And if you're playing Bruiser, that's awesome. You know, you invested in the right characters, and that's great. And hopefully you're having fun. I really hope you're having fun. I'm not saying that I don't have fun sometimes in the drafting. The problem is it's just there's way too many options for one strategy and not enough for the other. So they really need to correct that. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that today and see if you guys agreed. But anyway, yeah, that's what I got for you today. I really appreciate you listening, and let me know your comments below. But again, be respectful. You know, sometimes people say really stupid stuff in my comments. It's quite annoying, like calling me an idiot or a dumbass or something like that. It's just like, I made a YouTube video, man. You know, take a breather. All right. That's all I got for you today. Catch you on the next one. See ya.